You finally fall into a deep sleep, and then suddenly your eyes snap open. It's 2:30 in the morning. Again, there's that familiar pressure in your lower abdomen, that frustrating signal from your bladder demanding attention right in the middle of the night. You slowly sit up, exhausted, drag yourself to the bathroom, and wonder the same thing so many people wonder. Is my bladder shrinking? Is this just part of getting older? Is something going wrong inside my body that I can't control? But what if I told you that your bladder is not the real problem at all? What if the thing waking you up night after night is not a weak bladder, but something happening in a completely different part of your body? Today, I'm going to reveal a powerful urology technique called double voiding that helps force the bladder to empty more completely before bed. But before you can understand why that technique works so well, you need to understand where that hidden water is actually coming from, because it is not starting in your bladder. Here is the science most people never hear explained clearly. During the day, while you're sitting, standing, walking, or simply going about normal life, gravity is constantly pulling fluid downward through your body. Over the course of hours, that fluid slowly begins to collect in your lower legs, ankles, and feet. Most people do not even realize it is happening. They may notice slight sock marks on the skin by evening, a little puffiness around the ankles, or shoes feeling slightly tighter than they did in the morning, but they rarely connect that to what happens later at night. Yet this is exactly where the problem begins. Throughout the day, hidden water is quietly building up in the lower body, trapped there by gravity. Now here is where everything changes. The moment you lie down flat in bed, your body shifts from a vertical position to a horizontal one. Gravity is no longer holding that fluid down in your legs the way it did all day. So what happens next? That hidden water breaks loose. It begins moving back up into your bloodstream and toward your kidneys. And your kidneys do exactly what they were designed to do. They filter that extra fluid and turn it into urine. They do not care that you are asleep. They do not care that it is the middle of the night. They simply respond to the sudden increase in circulating fluid. That is why so many people wake up at 2 a.m., then again at 4 a.m., feeling exhausted and confused. It is not necessarily because the bladder is weak. It is often because the kidneys are being flooded with fluid that spent the whole day collecting in the legs. And that brings us to the good news. This problem is often fixable when you understand the mechanism behind it. The solution is not to just blame the bladder and hope for the best. The solution is to work with the body in the right order. First, we need to pump that trapped fluid out of the legs before you go to sleep, while you're still awake and able to process it on your own schedule. Then once that fluid has had time to move and your kidneys have started doing their job, we use the double voiding secret to empty the bladder as completely as possible before bed. That is the two-step plan. Step 1, get the hidden water moving before you fall asleep. Step 2, make sure your bladder is truly empty so there is less left inside to wake you up later. When you combine these two strategies, you are no longer passively waiting to be interrupted by your body in the middle of the night. You are taking control of the process before the night even begins. If this already makes sense to you, and you want more natural, practical, science-backed strategies like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe to True Health Tactics. It really does help this kind of helpful information reach more seniors and more people who are desperately losing sleep night after night and still have no idea why. In the next part, I'm going to show you exactly how to start draining that hidden water before bed and why doing it at the right time can completely change the way you sleep. Before we talk about emptying the bladder completely, there is one huge mistake you need to avoid, because if you get this part wrong, you can accidentally make the problem worse. A lot of people hear that moving the legs before bed can help, so they do a few exercises 5 minutes before turning off the lights. That sounds logical, but it backfires. Why? Because the moment you start pushing fluid out of your legs, your kidneys need time to process it. They do not convert that fluid into urine instantly. In most cases, it takes about 1 hour to 90 minutes for the fluid moving out of your legs to be filtered and turned into urine. That is why this routine must be done about 90 minutes before sleep, not right at bedtime. Not as your eyes are closing, 90 minutes before. This timing gives your body a chance to move the hidden water, send it back into circulation, let your kidneys do their job, and create the urge to urinate while you're still awake. That way, when you finally go to bed, you are not waiting for your bladder to fill up in the middle of the night. Now let's start with the first exercise, which is simple but extremely important. Sit in a sturdy chair with both feet flat on the floor. Keep your back relaxed and stable. From here, slowly lift both heels off the ground as high as you can while keeping the balls of your feet planted. At the top, squeeze your calf muscles for 1 second, then lower your heels back down. Repeat this slowly for about 15 to 20 repetitions. This movement may look small, but it is powerful because your calf muscles act like the body's second heart. Every time they contract, they help push blood and fluid upward from the feet and ankles and send it back toward the rest of the body. During the day, especially if you sit a lot or stand for long periods, the pumping system becomes sluggish and fluid begins pooling in the lower legs. This simple heel raise wakes that system back up. It tells the body to stop letting fluid sit in the feet and start pushing it out. Once you finish the seated calf pump, move to the second exercise, the upward calf massage. Sit comfortably and cross one ankle over the opposite knee so your leg forms a figure 4 shape. Now place both hands around your calf in a C shape. Start down near the heel and squeeze firmly as you slide your hands upward toward the back of the knee. Then release, return to the bottom, and repeat several times. This is not a random massage. This is a drainage technique, and the direction matters more than anything else. You must never massage downward. Never. If you push downward, you are forcing fluid back into the tissues, back into the foot and ankle, and directly against the natural flow of the lymphatic system. That can actually make swelling worse. The correct way to think about it is like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. You always squeeze from the bottom upward to push the contents out. That is exactly what you're doing here. You're helping trapped fluid leave the lower leg and move back into circulation where your kidneys can eventually handle it. Do several upward passes on one leg, then switch and repeat the same process on the other side. Now we come to the third and most powerful part of the setup, legs up the wall. Lie back on your bed and place your legs up against a wall, or if that is not practical, rest them high on a stack of 3 or 4 pillows. The absolute rule here is that your feet must be higher than your heart. Not level, higher. This is where gravity finally starts helping you instead of working against you. All day long, gravity has been pulling fluid downward into your legs and feet. But now, by elevating the legs above the heart, you reverse that pull. Gravity begins draining the trapped fluid back toward your core, where it can return to circulation and eventually be processed by the kidneys. Stay in this position for a few minutes and let your body soften. Close your eyes if you want. Let your shoulders relax. This step does more than just shift fluid. It also helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your body associated with rest, relaxation, and recovery. In other words, while the fluid is physically moving out of the legs, your body is also beginning to calm down and prepare for sleep in the right way. This is why the 90-minute setup is so important. First, you wake up the calf pump. Then you physically push the fluid upward with massage. Then you let gravity finish the job by draining the rest out of the legs. And because you did all of this 90 minutes before bed, your body now has the time it needs to process that fluid while you are still awake. That means when the urge to urinate comes later, it happens on your schedule, not at 2:30 in the morning. This entire routine is really about timing and sequence. You cannot double void properly if your legs are still full of hidden water, because that fluid will simply refill your bladder after you fall asleep. But once you drain the legs first, then the bladder technique becomes dramatically more effective. In the next part, I'll show you exactly how to use the double voiding method to empty the bladder more completely before bed, so you can finally sleep through the night. Now we come to the master technique, the step that delivers on the promise of this entire video. By this point, about 90 minutes have passed since you did the leg drain routine. That means the hidden fluid that was trapped in your lower legs has had time to move back into circulation, your kidneys have had time to filter it, and your bladder should now be holding that fluid while you are still awake. This is exactly the timing we wanted. Instead of that urine building up after you fall asleep and waking you up at 2 or 4 in the morning, it has arrived now, before bed, on your schedule. So this is your final bathroom trip of the night, and it is one of the most important moments in the entire routine. If you do this correctly, you can dramatically reduce the amount of urine left behind in the bladder and buy yourself extra hours of uninterrupted sleep. First, I want to speak directly to the men watching this. Gentlemen, there's absolutely no shame in sitting down to urinate at night. In fact, if your goal is to empty the bladder as completely as possible, sitting is the smarter and more effective way to do it. And when you stand, your pelvic floor muscles often hold a subtle amount of tension without you even realizing it. That tension can interfere with how fully the bladder empties. But when you sit down, the body naturally relaxes more deeply, especially in the pelvic floor. And when those muscles relax, urine can flow more freely and more completely. So if you truly want to empty the bladder 100% before sleep, sitting is not a weakness. It is a strategy. It is one of the simplest ways to improve your chances of sleeping through the night. Now let's walk through the double voiding technique itself very carefully. Start by sitting down and going to the bathroom normally. Do not rush. Let the bladder empty at its natural pace. Stay calm and give yourself a moment. Then, when you feel like you are finished, do not stand up, do not leave the bathroom, and do not assume the job is done. This is where most people make the mistake. They empty once, feel mostly done, and walk away. But that small amount left behind is often exactly what wakes them up later. Double voiding is designed to get the final hidden reserve out before bed. You have 2 good options for how to do it. Option 1 is this. After you finish the first time, carefully stand up, then gently tilt your torso forward and backward a few times. The movement should be small and controlled, not aggressive. The purpose is simply to shift the physical position of the bladder and help any remaining urine move toward the outlet. Then sit back down and try to urinate again. Option 2 is even simpler. Stay seated the entire time and gently lean your torso forward and backward in a small rocking motion. Shift your weight slightly, then settle again, and try to go a second time without standing up at all. Both methods work on the same principle. They physically reposition the bladder just enough to help that last remaining fluid collect where it can be released. Now here is the golden rule of double voiding, and it is absolutely critical. Do not force it, do not push, and do not strain. This is where people unintentionally sabotage the whole technique. The moment you strain, your pelvic muscles tighten, and when those muscles tighten, they can actually trap urine inside rather than help release it. That means the harder you push, the worse the result can become. So instead of forcing, do the opposite. Take a deep breath, let your shoulders soften, let your stomach relax, let your pelvic area completely release. Think of it as creating the conditions for the bladder to empty rather than trying to squeeze it empty by force. Nature works better when the body is relaxed. That is the secret. When you go the second time, you may notice only a small amount comes out. That is perfectly fine. In fact, that small amount is often the most important amount of all. It may not seem like much in the moment, but that leftover urine is often exactly what would have expanded in your bladder and triggered another wake-up later in the night. Getting that last bit out is what buys you those extra hours of deep, uninterrupted sleep. And that is why this technique is so valuable. It is simple, it is gentle, and when paired with a 90-minute leg drain routine, it works with the body's natural timing instead of against it. So, think of the whole sequence this way. First, you remove the hidden water from the legs, then you give the kidneys time to process it. Then you go to the bathroom one final time and use double voiding to empty the bladder as completely as possible. That combination is what makes the method powerful. It is not just about going to the bathroom before bed. It is about going at the right time, in the right way, after dealing with the real source of the problem. When you understand that, you stop blaming your bladder for everything and start working with your body intelligently. And for many people, that is the exact shift that finally allows them to sleep through the night. Now, let's talk about the lifestyle multipliers that can make this entire routine work even better. Even the best nighttime technique can be undermined if your daily habits are loading your body with fluid at the wrong time. One of the biggest mistakes people make is drinking too much of their water late in the day, especially around dinner. That is a recipe for disaster if you're trying to sleep through the night. A much better strategy is the 75-25 hydration rule. Drink about 75% of your daily water intake before 4 p.m. and save the remaining 25% for the evening. This gives your body the entire day to use and process most of your fluids, rather than pushing that work into the night. And as bedtime gets closer, try not to drink heavily. In general, you want to ease up on large amounts of liquids about 2 hours before sleep. This does not mean you should dehydrate yourself. It simply means being strategic. You are trying to support the body's natural rhythm, so the bladder is not overloaded, right when you want rest. The next thing to understand is the role of dinner itself, especially salt and caffeine. If you eat a very salty evening meal, you are making nighttime urination much more likely. Salt acts like a sponge inside the body. It pulls fluid into the tissues and encourages the body to hold on to water. That retained fluid does not simply disappear. Later, when you lie down and your body begins rebalancing, that fluid can return to circulation and eventually end up in the bladder while you're trying to sleep. So if you are serious about getting up less at night, avoid overly salty dinners. Try to keep the evening meal lighter, cleaner, and lower in sodium. Caffeine is another major hidden problem. A lot of people think if they have coffee in the late afternoon, it will wear off by bedtime. But that is often not true. Caffeine has a half-life of roughly 5 to 6 hours. That means if you drink a cup of coffee at 4 p.m., a significant portion of that caffeine can still be active in your system at 10 p.m. It can keep the nervous system alert, make the bladder more active, and reduce the quality of your sleep even if you do manage to fall asleep. That is why switching to herbal tea or a non-caffeinated drink in the afternoon can make a surprisingly big difference. Now I want to be a responsible guide and make one thing very clear. While double voiding and the 90-minute leg drain can work beautifully for fluid retention and nighttime bladder filling caused by hidden water in the legs, not every case of nighttime urination comes from the same source. Some situations need proper medical attention, and it is important to recognize the warning signs. If you feel a burning sensation when you urinate, that may be a sign of a urinary tract infection. If your stream is very weak, or it takes a long time to start urinating, that can be a sign of an enlarged prostate, especially in men. And if you're constantly and extremely thirsty both day and night, that may point to blood sugar issues that need to be checked. In situations like these, the right move is not to guess, it is to consult a doctor. These techniques are powerful tools, but they are not a replacement for proper medical evaluation when the signs suggest a deeper issue. So here's what I want you to do tonight. Try the double voiding technique along with the 90-minute leg drain. Follow the timing. Be patient with your body. Sometimes the response is immediate, and sometimes the body needs a little time to adjust to a better pattern. But once you start working with your body instead of against it, the results can be dramatic. A peaceful night of sleep is not a luxury. It is something you deserve. If this video helped you, please like the video, subscribe to True Health Tactics, and let me know in the comments how you slept. Your story might help someone else realize that their sleepless nights are not something they simply have to accept.